I won't go into the details actually as to why there was a carcass and what we put a camera trap up there for, but suffice to say we left a camera trap, which is a motion censored camera trap, up at a large carcass, and we've got the most amazing footage of bush pig feeding off it. So much like pigs, I mean, pigs are famous for eating pretty much absolutely everything. Bush pig are apparently quite similar, and I imagine warthog would be as well. But really, most of their diet, or 99.9% of their diet, is herbivorous, which meant that during the drought they were one of the animals that suffered the worst, which is why I'm so impressed that we have the numbers of warthogs that we've been seeing. It's quite astounding, really. Now, Francis, I want to reposition because there's actually two warthogs here, which is quite a common sight to see. So let me just switch around and then I'll answer your question in 1 second. And there's a reason that I want to reposition. So warthog females very often have their calves together. Their calves. What is wrong with me and my vocabulary today? Often have their piglets together. Oh, interesting. I'll explain why this is interesting in a second. They often have piglets and raise piglets together. So the most that they can have is 4. I'm sure there are certain exceptions to that, but the most you'll usually see belonging to one sow is 4. But between 2 and 3 would be the average number of piglets that you're going to see in a warthog family. Now, the reason I say it's interesting is the chap on the right is not a female. It is a big warthog boar. And you can see how much more, or how further extended those warts are on his face. He's got 4 of them as opposed to 2. And it is warthog breeding season. It is warthog rutting season. So he's going to be particularly defensive over these females. And it's not often that you get to see a warthog fight, but it can be surprisingly vicious. Our warthogs have kept us company for a while, but James has got a pretty bird that I don't want to fly away.
This is might hop away. This is a hopping bird, and it is the crested barbet. And as Jamie was saying that she was talking about the rutting season of the warthogs, I said to Fergus, I'm very pleased that we don't have a rutting season as human beings. I imagine that would be very unpleasant.
Very simple the rest of the time, though.
Yes, quite. Now I think this thing has found itself some form of insect or arachnid, and Fergus reckons it's a scorpion. But I don't know what's going. I'm not sure what he's finding there, but remember, this is largely a frugivorous bird, which means that he will be looking for fruits, but he can't eat fruit at this time of the year, and so he's had to move on to some kind of insect. That looked like a stone he'd eaten. Then he's cleaning his beak in the sand, and now he's flown off under war. We are on Cheetah Plains now, everyone, and we're going down towards Djuma Dam. Yes, I know that sounds odd, doesn't it? But there is a dam here at Cheetah Plains called Djuma Dam, and I want to go down there because there were reports of Tundi wandering about here during the course of the day. Oh, he was there, was he? Fergus, he's still there. There he is. Oh, beautiful. Now cleaning his beak on the bushes. Very nice. Righty, on we go. Doves above. I'm just saying also how it's starting to get quite a lot colder quite quickly. That is, as the sun goes down and the winter approaches, the shady bits are just quite chilly. There's still so much forage here on Cheetah Plains and on Chitwa. It's so thick that finding any forms of animal is going to be very difficult, but we're going to do our best. While we do that, Tristan apparently has got tracks of something that no one has seen for days.
Well, exactly, we haven't, but it's what we were hoping to find. But these are tracks for lions. Now, if you look across here, it is almost impossible to see anything. It just looks like a bare sort of soil. But if I start pointing them out here, you'll see that if we follow the grass stem along this edge and around like this, there comes the first lobe, then the second lobe here, and then the third lobe comes around like this and into there, and then the toes forming in this direction. So that is the track of a lioness. Now the reason why we know it's a lioness is just because of the size of this track is perfect lioness track. The other reason we know that it's a track is if I look at the gravel around here, Seb, so if you look where my finger is, you see how all the stones are sitting quite high on the surface. So when water ran here, these stones had been kicked up and they're all very loose. Now look at where the track is. Look at how the stones have been compressed into the track itself. Now if I put my finger here and I push, you get the exact same effect where the stones go actually into the soil, and that's how we were able to see this. Herbie's got the most incredible eyes when it comes for tracks, so we're very fortunate. Now the interesting thing is that these tracks are going in and out of this drainage line, and I'm hoping just maybe that in the section behind us here there could potentially be some good news. Now we're going to go and check it out before the sun gets down, because it is starting to get dark and it is very, very thick in there. But there's a rocky outcrop that Herbie was telling me about, and I wonder if maybe one of these females doesn't have cubs in that den. I know that the young female from the Nkahuma Pride has been mating quite a lot. We haven't seen them, so I'm not 100% sure if she was pregnant, but there was a very heavy pregnant lioness seen by a ranger a few days ago around Arathusa, and that is not far from where we are now. So it could really well mean that these lions could be in this thicket behind us somewhere with cubs. So we're going to go and check it out, and if they are from that lioness, it will be amazing, because that lioness was seen I think 4 days ago, which means that if they are cubs here, they're not even 4 days old, which is really, really crazy. So I think without further ado, before it starts to get too dark and we get ourselves into trouble, I think it's time to start heading into this bush and try and see if we can't actually find them. Now when we do this, it's often very, very difficult. Now there's something on the road down there. Seb, can you see what that is? I wonder if this isn't shadow popping out here. No, it's a warthog. Yes, warthog? Yes, it's a warthog. I thought for a second it was shadow that was popping out behind us. She likes this area, and I know Jamie's been looking for her, and from a distance like this, it's just a dark object walking down the road, and it does look a little bit leopard-like. So that would have been quite epic if we had found shadow, but unless it's just a warthog. Now warthog, you must be careful, because there's Tingana, there's shadow, and the Nkahuma lionesses all around this area. So let's see how we go, and hopefully our warthog will stay out of trouble. And while we do this, Jamie is actually looking for shadow, so maybe she would like to come and get this warthog and take it with her in her search.
Perhaps I should go and collect that warthog, although I had warthogs of my own not far away. It would have been so lovely if Tristan had just looked up on the road and there was shadow. He could have called me in, I could have raced there. I'm not actually that far away, so I could have been there in pretty much 2 seconds, not quite. 2 minutes, depending on how much bumping about in the back Craig could stand. Alas, 'tis not. 'Twas a warthog, and I don't think the warthog would take very kindly to being taken on game drive. We do get the odd unexpected visitor in the form of a mantis or a spider, but a warthog might be taking things a little bit far. Can you imagine? Ooh. Okay. I'm trying to decide. I think I'm going to go this way. The tracks cut across in this direction. I didn't pick up on anything there, but again, lots of vehicles. So now I'm just really hoping that we get lucky. We just have to bump into her. It would be so wonderful. In the sunset, cub playing around. I really want to see Shadow's cub before I leave. And I might come back and she'll be all grown up. Or it. I don't know if it's a she. I think it is a she though. We've also been, let's face it, a bit short on the cats. recently. Or at least we've gone a few days, and because we're so spoilt, we haven't seen that many leopards or lions. It feels like we've gone forever without seeing them. We have had lots of elephants to keep us company, though. Okay. Wait for the sun to dip a little bit lower, and then we'll go back to Red Dam and hope we get lucky. And even if we sit there, we might hear Tingana calling. As we drive into the setting sun, it seems as though James too is going west.
I am going west and I've got nothing to show for it, which is a bit distressing. Anyway, we are doing our best. We are here still on Cheetah Plains. We have gone past Djuma Dam, and it was into this drainage system here that apparently Thandi disappeared earlier on. Now this of course is a very dodgy boundary area. One must be careful not to cross. We don't want to go onto the wrong property, do we, Fergus?
No.
That would be very naughty. So evil. Now, I have decided, I said to Fergus it's getting cold here, and Louisa, you'll just have to monitor the signal here. I have to go through this dip. How's it doing?
Oh dear, it seems as though not only James driving into the west, but he drove into a place where there is no signal, which is most unfortunate. Luckily, trusty Wendy, never thought I'd say that, seems to be absolutely fine. So we apologise for that. I think you lost James in mid-sentence. One of those realities of live safaris. We do work on it, but never fear. You're still with me. We're still searching for anything. Driving to the west didn't seem to be producing any results for me, so I'm driving to the north now. I might shortly be driving back to camp where I left my jackets hanging up next to the vehicles, which is really silly to do in the middle of winter. It's most unfortunate. You're never going to guess what I've spotted. Oh my goodness, never mind what I've spotted. It was another warthog. Cheetah, Brent, Mara, go! Now!
Had a really long day. We've been and when we got home, we spotted a female cheetah. Now, there are some other vehicles around, but I've positioned myself between her .
Oh dear, it seems as though Brent has disappeared off your screen as well. Never mind. We'll carry on. Shall I do the same routine apology? I'm sorry. Realities, gremlins. Still working on getting the Mara all set up. So unfortunately, for our Endangered Species Day, it didn't quite work out the way we had planned. Alright, cheer up everyone. We're going to find Shadow, Cub and Tingana all together, all playing happy families. That's what's going to happen. And don't worry, if you think you're disappointed, I can only imagine what Brent's face looks like right now. Possibly frozen somewhere in the feed. In an awkward expression, as always happens to us. Oh, good. Vast open plain of not much. Let's go look at some Impala. No, not some, just one. One Impala bottom. Over there. Quite far away. Well, it's very pretty this evening. The light is properly golden. And impala are, I think, an underappreciated species. Not really to go on our endangered list, but they are stunning antelope and very graceful. I wonder if this one's seen the leopards. You know, it might be quite nice, since our impala is slowly but surely walking away from us. It might be quite nice to watch the buffalo weavers in the sun as they go about building their nests. There they are, their messy nests in what looks like an albizia tree. And perhaps we'll even see them adding to the nests themselves. If you go down a little bit, Craig. Oh, never mind, it flew away. Oh, good. All of them flew away. So now you've got a view of a bird's nest in the golden sunlight. Ah, Craig. And there's a very pretty dead tree. I wonder how old that leadwood is. That dead leadwood. That could be hundreds of years old. I don't know. I guess we'll never know. But it is very pretty. Looks like a centerpiece. Well, from trees and golden light, let's go to James, illuminated by the sun.
There's a massive amount of life over here. None of it, however, has a beating heart. Much of it has got chlorophyll filling its cells. There are many different kinds of flower, tree, herbaceous plant of various descriptions, maybe one or two insects and things. But in terms of actual heartbeats, those iconic creatures of Africa that we so desperately scour the land for, nada, zilcho, none. We're now going towards 3 in a row pan, hoping that something will have come down to drink there today. I'm astounded by the lack of elephants there have been this afternoon. I find that really amazing, because we had hundreds of them this morning, hundreds yesterday, and now just the one. It really is quite astonishing. Anyway, that's how it goes. That's how it goes, you know. Oh, an impala, my goodness gracious. Hang on a second, let me... There's 2. There are 2 of them. Good grief. Hello, impala. You've saved the day. In amongst my favourite grass, well, the backdrop of my favourite grass. And that, of course, is Hyperrhenia hirta, at least Hyperthelia dissoluta, which is not nearly as interesting as the magnificent vista that you are about to see with Brent Smith. We are not going to see a view from the Mara with Brent Smith. We are back here, looking at the sunset. They are really having a few technical glitches there, everybody, so please bear with us. It will hopefully be ironed out fairly soon. I nearly attempted to do my Brent Smith voice, but I thought I might burst the microphone, so I did not. He's really seen some magnificent stuff there while we watch the golden orb of the sun. He's seen cheetahs today. I've no doubt he's seen lions and elephants and topi and Thompson's gazelles and various other wonderful things. Hello, Christopher. You're 13 years old and you say, what is the temperature here right now? And I'm going to have to suck that out of my thumb at the moment. I'm going to say it's dropped from about 78 or 26 down to probably about 20 or 21 degrees Celsius, which I'm getting lots of help from the final control with this, which is around about, they tell me it's 25 and 77. That is absolute rubbish. There's no way it's only a degree colder than it was when we started. I'm going to go with 21 degrees Celsius, which is roughly 70 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not sure where that information comes from. This guy's just marking himself some territory. I've had to put on my thick woolly jumper. Of course, that is because I'm not very manly Because in South Africa, of course, you don't put on a jersey until you've got icicles falling off your nose. Not so, Fergus. You've got your short sleeves on, don't you? Yeah. The icicle is forming.
I've also cashed in my man card, and I have put on a fleece.
You've put on a fleece, goodness. Yeah, no, it's definitely not 77 degrees anymore. Good. Alrighty, let's carry on this way down the road. This is the road I want to take, I think, is it? No, it's not the road I want to take. That will take us onto the Mala boundary. We're browsing and grazing, and whether or not certain animals will prefer certain types of grasses and leaves. Yes, definitely. There are a sort of general suite of grasses that will be preferable to all. For example, that red oat grass that is all over the Mara, when we get it here, everything likes to eat it. All the animals, all the grazers out here will like to eat it. But if we go to, say, the winter time, when animals must eat on different kinds of foods, you'll find that concentrate feeders like Steenbok and Duiker, they will go for the different sort of roots and the rhizomes and the seeds and that sort of thing of the grasses, and then the buffalo will keep eating the straw-like, very dry grass. And then if you look at leaves, at the trees and that sort of thing, yeah, again, the most nutritious trees are going to get eaten most frequently, but things like tambuti trees, which are toxic to some animals, are perfectly edible to others, like a kudu. They will happily eat a toxic tambuti tree, as will a black rhino, but many animals will avoid them. So, I mean, I started off that by saying, yes, different animals will favor different species of grasses and leaves, but I'd sort of like to modify that to, yes, to a certain extent, but a good grass is a good grass for all animals, and a good leaf from a tree is good for just about all animals. And the same way, I guess, for us, we know what's good and what's bad. Now, Tristan has got something quite terrifying. He's got a plague of biblical proportions.
We do indeed, James, and this is so amazing. I haven't seen these guys in so long, but it looks like a swarm of milkweed locust nymphs. Now you can see that green along the edge of the sides, which is quite typical of the milkweed locust. They've got that aposematic coloration, so those blacks and greens to signify to everyone that they are toxic, and these are all the tiny little ones, and so that's probably why they're hiding out here in mass like this, so that they appear a lot larger and therefore don't get eaten. Now, interestingly enough, they're not actually on a milkweed, they're on a bush willow, and so they will probably disperse once they get a little bit bigger. And look at them all moving now. Isn't that amazing? That is so cool. I haven't seen, for a long time, I haven't seen these guys. That is incredible. Now, these little guys you'll find often clustering together like this, and even when they become big adults, and when they get big, they'll get to about the size of my index finger. Now, currently, they're quite small. I'm going to try to put my finger there. Excuse my dirty nails from the mud earlier, but there we go. You can see how big they are at the moment. They'll grow to about the size of my finger when they're fully grown. So you can imagine all of these thousands of locusts together as the size of my finger. And then they huddle together on these plants, and they feed off them and just literally strip them of everything. But these guys are amazing. That is so cool. Now, Herbie spotted them while we were walking through this thicket looking for these lion tracks, but that is amazing. Look at them all moving. Wow, absolutely incredible. Very cool. Alright guys, well, I'm not going to disturb them too much more because I don't want them to break apart and to then get picked off by anything. So I think what we're going to do is just leave them alone and let them carry on about their day. But that is one of those one-in-a-kind finds. You don't get to see that very often. So we're very fortunate that we got to see those. Very well spotted, Herbie. Excellent. Well, I think that's a really, really good thing to find. Now, let's carry on, Seb. I would imagine that it's a perfect sort of time to start getting out of this thicket, because as we're in it, the sun is just starting to set. And when you're in thickets like this, and if you're tracking lionesses that you think potentially could be looking for dens or have a den, it's not the best place to be at night. So we're going to try to see if we can't just worm our way through and get it. But now, where we are now is quite an interesting area. It's a section where is actually quite appropriate for today, because we're talking about endangered species, and this is an endangered species plant area. Now you can see on the soil here, you'll notice that it is completely bare. Now everywhere else that we've walked this afternoon has been lots of grass, but in this area it's bare, and the reason for that is because the type of tree that actually grows here. And I've picked a branch. So Jason, you were wondering about endangered plants. Well, here we go. Here is one of them. It's called a tumbuti. Now, it is quite a common plant in this part of the park, but outside of the game reserve, because of its wood and its good qualities for carving, it has unfortunately been chopped down en masse, and there is really not too many of them left outside of protected areas. So this is one of the protected species of plants that we get out here in South Africa, and their numbers really have declined quite a lot, and it's because it's quite a slow-growing tree. Now, it's quite easy to identify this plant. It's got these sort of very sort of pointed leaves like this that almost end in quite a sharp point, and there's a slight little wave on them, and you'll find that these leaves will be varying colors in the winter months. In summer they stay a sort of uniform green, but in winter they'll start to turn yellows and reds, and they become one of the most beautiful trees that we have. Now, but the easiest way to know if it is a tumbuti is if you pick it. You see there that there is a white latex coming out of there. Now that white latex is toxic to us, so if we had to consume this plant or this tree, I could potentially die from it. Now what they did use that toxic sort of latex for was for toothache. So if you had a sore tooth, they would pick a leaf like this and then they would just dab that latex onto the site, and they would say that it would deaden the pain. So it really is quite a sort of gamble. I don't know if I would be quite keen to do that. The rest of the plant, even if you burn it, you can have sort of stomach problems and get violently ill with nausea and sort of going out the other way as well. So it's not a tree you want to mess around with, and even holding it like this, when I go home I'm going to have to wash my hands very, very carefully, because otherwise this evening I'm going to have headaches and an upset stomach. So not a nice tree at all. Now the reason why the soil is bare and where we are is because of this latex. As these leaves drop, this latex actually goes into the ground and it poisons this whole area around us, and it stops other trees from actually growing. And on top of that, you can see they're growing here. This is one of them. They start to grow up and they grow very tall, and once they've grown past the sort of level of everything else, they then block out all the light, and it becomes very difficult for grasses and other tree species to grow around them. So that's why they'll dominate an area once they get in. So if we left these alone and we didn't harvest them for all these different crafts and things, then we would have lots of tumbutis, but unfortunately they've been cut down en masse. Right, Seb, let's get out of here so we don't get eaten. I think it's that time to start moving away and through the thickets. As you can see, it's not exactly a very open section that we're in here. We're in quite a sort of thick area. Now, Seb, you should be alright to get through. There we go, Seb. So, Hot Dog, you're wondering if we live on site and in the reserve all year round. Well, yes, we do. So, we luckily live here for 24/7. We work varying sort of degrees of lengths of time. Sometimes we'll work up to 6 weeks being here every single day, and then we'll go on leave, and that's generally when people will go to their sort of homes, wherever that may be, Johannesburg, Cape Town, the rest of South Africa. But yes, we live 24 hours a day on the reserve. It sometimes can be a hard life because it's not easy to sort of plan for 6 weeks at a time and have everything that you need, because you can't just pop off to the shops and get what you want. But to be surrounded by nature and to listen to the sounds and hear the lions roaring at night and the leopards soaring and the bush babies is such a special thing. So we really are fortunate to be able to stay out here and be able to live amongst the animals. And now, it's that time of the day where it's starting to get very, very dark, which means that we need to start heading home, back to base camp. And so while we do that, let's go across to Jamie, who's still battling to find Shadow.
I am battling to find Shadow, but what I'm racing to do now is get you a really lovely view of the sunset, because it's quite pretty one this evening. Just bear with me 1 second. Oh, there's a bumpy patch of road. The sunset, oh, we're not going to make it for the setting of the sun, but that's okay, the colours will still be there. We'll go to a very popular sunset spot. Since I haven't had any luck with Shadow or Tingana, I've checked Red Dam 3 times today. They haven't popped out there. I don't know exactly where they've vanished to. We'll have to try again on the sunrise of tracks to follow. Cool. The Impala can watch us watch the sunset. Here we go, we're just going to catch it. I often wonder that, Lou. Lou's wondering if the Impala ever appreciate the sunset, or any animals, or if that's a strictly human thing. Just catching it as it disappears behind the Drakensberg Mountains. And I'm just going to take this opportunity to say that on Tuesday, I only found out last night, but on Tuesday the World and Conservation lost a very special woman named Jennifer. And the reason that I'm mentioning it now, in this context and out here looking at the sun setting, is because without Jennifer, I don't think I would be doing this job. I don't think I would have got to the point where I could follow this as a career. I owe her a huge amount, and I'm not the only person in the world that does. And unfortunately, she passed away on Tuesday, but she was a very, very special woman, and my thoughts are with her family. She gave me an education, a tertiary education. She gave me my first ever job out in the bush, on a beautiful reserve in the Kalahari. And it's a nice moment just to sit and celebrate a woman whose life, although it was cut short, has brought so much meaning to so many other people. Thank you, Jennifer. A sunset worthy of a very worthy person. I'm not going into details, and I'm not going to, out of respect for the privacy of her family, I'm not going to give out her surname. But a very special woman. And you know, when they offered to pay for my university education, and the condition was that I never tell anyone who it was, which was quite incredible as well. It was a real case of the one hand giving without the other knowing. Okay, on to happier things. Let's go visit the hyena den. Maybe tonight of all nights they'll be out. Thank goodness for beautiful sunsets, huh? How on earth would we ever say anything meaningful? Right, but the sun setting, apart from its sheer beauty, does mean that our team on foot have to start rapidly heading towards home. So let's go across to Tristan for his last few minutes with you.
Well, it is a beautiful, beautiful sunset, and we've got those Drakensberg Mountains in the distance, which are just poking through the trees, so we're not quite out of this thicket just yet, and so we've only got a little edge of the mountain peeking through, but it is quite clear today, and that's that cooler weather that we've had is just making for much clearer skies. Now I can hear some oxpeckers going overhead. Now those oxpeckers hopefully are not on their way to a buffalo that's lurking nearby, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem. We're going to try and see if we can't get out and get back to closer towards camp, because it is quite a long journey away, and I think hopefully one of our crew members might come and rescue us in a vehicle and try and see. But you can see we're just sort of clearing that dense area, and Hervey and I were just having a little discussion now about these lion tracks, and they do go in and out there, and they're kind of back and forth, and it could be that they potentially were hunting there, or they still look looking for a den site. We didn't find any fresh tracks around a termite mound or around a rocky section that could indicate that they're going there frequently, but they definitely have gone in and out a few times, which generally would indicate that they should be looking maybe for something to start denning. So it's exciting times ahead, and hopefully it might signal the return of the Nkumas back to Djuma, which would be fantastic. So that's all we have time for. Seb and I wish you farewell, and we'll see you all in the morning. It's been a lovely afternoon. We've enjoyed having you, so let's go across to James.
Just excuse this little bit of noise, everybody. There we go. I've had to put my beanie hat on. It's got so very cold for those of us who are not manly. And there is Gorman, the gormless gnu, on his own, on Mala Mala, with nothing but a Birchall starling and the great expanse of Africa stretching to the south for company. Good evening, Gorman. But as you can see, he's not particularly fond of company, otherwise he'd have looked up. You see, he's sort of looking up. Oh, he's also got 2 oxpeckers who want to be his friends. They also want to eat his earwax. Very nice of them to eat his earwax. Gorman? Ah, there you were acknowledging us. Hello, how are you? You had a good day? Seen anything like a leopard or a cheetah? Not. I don't think you speak English, do you? You could have seen a great herd of them walking past and you wouldn't know how to tell me, would you? Just shake your head. No, he's just positioning his ear for a bit of wax eating. No, he's nodding. See that? He was definitely nodding there. He's obviously seen a cheetah or a leopard. 2 nods for go east. Oh, just flick your ear, yes. Left ear, okay, good. So they went to the east. I'm not sure that's what he meant, really. He's now hungry again. Thank you, Norman. It is quite a pretty view. In fact, if we show you the whole expanse at the back there, that is a gorgeous view, and it's not quite the Mara, but this is as close to it as we get out here in southern Africa. That's not to say one is better than the other, but there are just far fewer clearings in this part of the world. There's Louise Pavid, who's on the Vox this afternoon, says, a mini Mara. Yes, I suppose it is a mini Mara, Louise. Very good, very good. Just be quiet. Yes, I think they're on in coral. Norman has heard them as well. It has startled him into huge activity, as you can see. Roshni, difficult as this is going to be to show you, there are different features of male and female wildebeest, but not as clear and obvious as they would be, say, on a buffalo. Obviously, the most easy thing to look at is the undercarriage. You can definitely see which of them are male or female when they wag their tails, or the female's udders are very obvious indeed. That there is obviously a bull, on account of the fact that he has a scrotum hanging between his back legs. But otherwise, Roshni, it's not easy. They don't have obviously bigger horns, and so, or you can tell a buffalo bull from a cow at 100 paces. These ones you can't really. The bulls are definitely bigger. They've got a bigger set of horns. They've got thicker necks, and they're heavier. But if you don't know wildebeest extremely well, and in fact, I mean, I would look at this. If you told me that was a cow, I would maybe think twice, but I certainly wouldn't doubt you too much. But other than that, it's really quite difficult to tell the difference. They've both got horns. The horns are pretty much the same shape and size. A cow might have slightly smaller horns than that, but not much. He's got a thicker neck though. He's definitely quite a tough looking fellow. She's just slightly lighter and slightly built. He's just contemplating where he's going to find some company for the night, because of course the night is dark, Fergus, and full of terrors, correct. Alrighty, let us press on from here and see what else Cheetah Plains has to offer us before it gets too cold. See? I stole this beanie hat from my brother. He was throwing things out in his house and packing things away, and I said, I'll have that. He said, no, but I might need it. I said, are you putting it in a box? He said, but I might need it some other time, you know, when I need it out of the box. So I said, well, then you can ask me for it and I'll give it back. I haven't heard anything from him since. Adele, I like this question, and I do. You say, do I think that any animals get bored? Adele, I think that elephants get profoundly bored. I think young elephant bulls especially, and elephant calves get very bored. And I think that's why they play with us. I think that's why they'll come up to the vehicles, check them out, toss sand at us sometimes, and just come and sort of stand and look, because it's something out of the ordinary. And as I was saying to a young viewer this morning, imagine waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and eating spinach all the way through to 8 o'clock in the morning. I mean, by the time 8 o'clock comes around, you must be so bored, you'd be so bored you could hardly speak. And so it was with no surprise, I didn't think that we had such a spectacular sighting this morning of elephants. Kanyeni and Quarantine apparently were around this area at some stage, but they most certainly are not anymore. So we're going to start winding our way back towards the west, back towards Djuma. Cheetah Plains has not delivered a great plethora of predators. Now Jamie Patterson will hopefully have some luck at the home of the hyena.
I hope we will have some luck at the home of the hyena. Not too far away now. I haven't had much luck with the home of the hyena in a long time. In fact, what's that? Oh, it's a little Dacre. Just saw this tiny little hunched over figure running in the road. I thought it was Shadow again. So far today we've had Shadow the Dacre and Shadow the Warthog, but not Shadow the Leopard. I don't know if I consider that a success. Apparently you did briefly see it, the little shape run across the road. Ooh. This is taking a serious chance. No, too much of a chance. It's gone. The thing with the smaller antelope, the Shire antelope, is they're fine when you drive past them, but as soon as you stop, and especially if you reverse to look back at them, they're gone. It's one of those things you have to get at that exact moment, or else they're probably going to be gone. Every now and again you get one very obliging Dacre or one very obliging Steenbok. Indeed. Louise says if only they'd be more obliging. Oh well. It is in their nature. Alright, here we go. Are we going to get lucky with the hyenas this evening? I don't know. I'm a little bit concerned. I know that one of the cubs hasn't been seen in the last, or at least the last 2 times that we've been to visit this den. I'm hoping that today might be somewhat different. I'm hoping that it's still around. Please let it still be around. Oh, tracks of hyenas? No. Let's go see. Come on, Ribbon. Please be home. I still think it must be round about time for our other hyenas to start having cubs soon. Surely. I mean, Madam had November. I've spoken about this before, but Scarback hasn't, as far as we know, had a cub in a while. Quite a long time. Madam had Pretty in November. Sorry, not Madam had Pretty. She did have Pretty, but long ago. Madam had November in November, but a year and a half ago. So it could be time for some of our clan members. Louise said she had a dream where we found the den with all of the members around. Oh, I hope so, Lou. Maybe your dream will turn out to be correct. That looks very empty to me. Any sign of movement? Of course, if one sibling is no longer with us, if it didn't make it, then the other one probably won't be as bold as it was before, just because usually hyena cubs spur each other on. No, I don't see any heads popping out. Let's just go around the corner in case we are missing Ribbon suckling right round there. Well, so it's always possible, we said this the last time and they came back here, that they've moved. No luck. Unfortunately, when there aren't any cubs at the den, we can sit and spend a little bit of time, but technically our policy is, if there's nobody here, we leave. Especially with the cubs being as young as they are. That, you see, I wonder how fresh those tracks are. Let me just look at those carefully. There's tracks in the sand. No, those are fresh. Those are from today, I would say. So it's not abandoned, which is good news. Now, James, of course, was far out when he last spoke to you, but he's on his way home. Let's see how that journey's going.
I'm still far. I'm not returned. There, you would have missed it because I still had the car on. It was the call of the red-crested kohan, which has now ceased to call. I'm coming past 3 in a row pans, everybody. And, well, nothing is thirsty. Quarantine, who everyone else in the universe has seen at these pans, is not here. 2 pseudo geese are there. That is all there are. Oh, well, that's quite a pretty reflection of the pseudo geese there, Fergus, isn't it? Very artistic. It's really very pretty indeed. Now, I asked you earlier on about a rhino story, and I told you that I would tell it to you on my way home when the night was dark and full of terrors and not full of... and not full of terrapins or chameleons or jennets or civets or bush babies, etc., etc. And so shall it be that I will tell the story of the rhinoceros. But the story begins not with the rhinoceros, but with 2 ants. And you may have heard the story before, but I'm going to tell it again. I told it a while back. It begins with 2 ants called Maurice and Albert. Maurice and Albert were 2 ants, and they lived in a... Or call them termites, actually. They weren't ants at all. That's very insulting of me. They were termites, and they lived in a mound. And they were sort of uppity millennial types, you know, dissatisfied with life, slightly entitled. felt that life hadn't dealt them quite the hand that they had expected at birth. You know, they promised great things, and suddenly they just found themselves working in the production line of termite existence. They weren't particularly favoured. They weren't higher caste termites like the soldiers, and they struggled to accept their lot in life. And one day they were moaning and groaning as they lifted sand granule by sand granule onto the edge of the termite mound, mixed it with a bit of saliva and a bit of dung, and they were considering their lot. Not very silently, they were whining away at each other. And Maurice said to Albert, "I can't believe this is what we got to do the rest of our days, just shoveling dirt and mixing it with our own dung and saliva and bricking it here." And Albert said, "I can't believe it either. I think it's just a fat cheek. I didn't think sign up for this, but I didn't get an option to sign up for anything." Anyway, the conversation is not relevant to the story. What is relevant to the story is that they suddenly heard a thunderous noise, and the earth shook around them. And they scuttled up to the top of the termite mound, because although they were dissatisfied, entitled millennial types, they were also quite clever. And so they went up to the top of the mound and they looked. And indeed, because they had 6 legs, they could put 2 hands to their eyes and look from side to side. And there, coming out of the west as the sun set, was the terrifying figure of Ubejan. And Ubejan was the black rhinoceros. And Ubejan was on his territorial marking, and at that particular time of the year he liked to mark just past this termite mound. But a tree had fallen over his normal path, and the mound wasn't very big, and so on his way past he was going Ubejan, Ubejan, Ubejan. He squashed the mound, and then he carried on going. And there was a great emergency, of course, within the termite mound, and not being born of great intelligence, most termites, it was decided by the building committee of workers in consultation with the Queen, who was far more interested in breeding than she was in building, that they would rebuild the mound in exactly the same place. Now, I mean, this rhinoceros took about 4 days to do his circle, and so in 4 days they'd got quite a long way to building the next mound. And on the evening of the 4th day, Albert and Maurice, who had finished their day's labours, were sitting out. They'd created themselves a little balcony where they could watch the sunset from the sort of terrace, if you like, of their mound. And there they were watching the sunset when, once again, the thunderous noise came to their ears. And they looked at each other, and Maurice said to Albert, he said, "I don't believe it. I think he's coming back this way." And Albert said, "I think he's right. I think you're right, Maurice. I think he is coming this way." Anyway, and he was coming this way. Ubejan came along. Out of the setting sun, he came, Ubejan, Ubejan, Ubejan. He squashed the mound. Now, Maurice and Albert were lucky to, remain unscathed by all this. Like I say, entitled millennial types though they were very intelligent, and they disappeared off as he stepped on the mound, and they were safe. Not so many of their colleagues, who unfortunately departed this life post-haste. The building committee met again the next morning and decided that they would build again, but in the same place. Now, to Maurice and Albert, quite intelligent, entitled millennial types, this seemed an absolutely ridiculous option. Clearly, this rhino used this path often. Their objections went unheard because they'd whined basically since birth, and so nobody listened to them. And they thought, to hell with this. In fact, to hell with a lot of things, because we have no status in this mound, and we're going to prove to these people that we are worth something. And that even though we are hipsters have worth. in the termite colony and indeed to the world, and we are going to show them this time. And they did not build the mound that day. Or for the next 3 days, they plotted in secret on a fallen marula tree where a few of the workers were collecting supplies for the rest of the mound. They pretended to help, but in secret they plotted for the demise of Ubejan. And on the evening of the 4th day, as the sun was setting in the great western horizon, blazing like a black silhouette, out of the sunset came Ubejan, 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 Ubejan. And he squashed the mound again. Didn't notice and carried on. Well, unfortunately for him, Albert and Maurice were hiding behind a very large marula tree, and as Ubejan went past, they gave chase. And now you must understand, for a termite to keep up with a black rhino is no mean feat. Obviously a black rhino is much faster than a termite. And they were going at a great speed behind Ubejan, 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 and the two little termites going behind him, and they chased him down the rhino path, and they could see where he was going because the rhino path curved to the side. They took a shortcut across an ant path at great risk to themselves, and Ubejan was running on his path, and as he came round the corner, they cut him off, and they leapt onto his tail, and now they were moving along with him. You can imagine a termite holding onto the tail of a rhino. Must have been a tremendously horrible ride. Anyway, that's what they were doing. And I'm afraid that we're going to lose signal soon, so you might have to have episode 2 on our way back. Anyway, then what happened was Maurice, who was slightly more intelligent than Albert and was not wearing his skinny jeans like Albert was, because of course a hipster's clothing is generally completely impractical, but Maurice had sawn off his skinny jeans, and he was holding on and was just a bit more lithe as he hung there. And Albert said to him, no, Albert was the brain. Maurice was the sort of, he was the more physically, Maurice was more physically useful than Albert. And that is where we are going to leave the story until I'm out of Cheetah Plains.
But how does the story end? What happens with Maurice? What happens with Albert? I'm dying to know. We'll have to wait for James to find some signal to find out. Fiery-necked Nightjar. The other Nightjars, the Mozambican, the square-tailed, they have slightly less of a lyrical call. And supposedly, according to bird books, in a literal reading of the bird calls, and I take no responsibility for this whatsoever. You know, we always talk about how hilarious it is reading the descriptions of the bird calls in the bird books, and you get the 3 blind mice and the odd different calls. Wait, I'm going to check that my bird book says this, because my other bird book, my old bird book, my old bird book used to say, "Dear Lord, deliver us," was the call of the fiery-necked Nightjar. I'm not quite sure what had the Nightjar so upset, but something did. 246, in case you were wondering. That's an owl. Right, fiery-necked Nightjar. The one that we're looking at, those are the bits that look like they are almost dipped in gold. Sorry, my fingernails are still full of mud from the disaster that was my rhino building attempt. And my bird book, this particular bird book doesn't say "Dear Lord," it says "Good Lord, deliver us." There you go. Good Lord, deliver us. How on earth that describes what it actually does, which I can't imitate. Maybe James is better at it, although don't ask James to do it. He's got to finish his story first. But it sort of goes... That was terrible. That's not what it sounds like at all. How do you... No, I'll have to play it for you. I'll have to play it for you. That was a disaster. None of the others have any words to them. The Eurasian Nightjar says, utters a nasal grunt on flushing. That is not nearly as entertaining as the fiery neck Nightjar. Okay. We're not going to go down all of the routes of the different bird calls. I haven't done this in ages. I can't believe I forgot to do this. Where's this? Not there. Not there. Square-tailed. What does the square-tailed say? That's another one that we get out here. Huh. Prolonged churring. Changing in pitch at intervals. Changing gears. My nail looks terrible. I'm going to hide that away. I have no idea what that means. It does basically go... I can do that one. Okay, Nightjar. I'll have to play you a fiery neck Nightjar at some point. Right. I've got my blanket on because I completely forgot my jackets. I took them out and I put them next to the car and I forgot mine. Now the problem with this blanket is this is one of the blankets that we all sit upon. We call them, let's say we call them our bottom blankets. So I'm wearing one of our bottom blankets. Apparently Tristan is in final control laughing at me. I'd sooner be laughed at than cold, Tristan. I'm nice and warm wrapped up in one of our bottom blankets. Might have to go shower after this. I took the one from the bottom, underneath the one on the, well, obviously on the one on the, underneath the one on the top. Louise has suggested flea dip. Look, these blankets have gone a while without a... It just smells very dusty. It doesn't smell bad, it just smells very dusty. I think there's an accumulation of about a year's worth of dust in them. Oh. That's not where I wanted to go. I want to go backwards. Let's go find the bronze-winged coursers and then do their literal bird reading. Oh, of course it's endangered. Hey, leave me alone, Leadwood. That's an endangered species of tree that just tried to grab the blanket off me. Apparently it disapproves. Lou was thinking, well, are any of the species of Nightjar endangered? Not as far as I know, not the ones that we've spoken about, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them are. And then, of course, there's the famous, actually, I have to show you this. The famous Nightjar Nightjar of Ethiopia. And the reason I have to show you this, the most amazing book, by the way, about this particular discovery. In terms of it being endangered, there's all of them in flight. Where are you now? There we go. This is the only part of this particular bird that has ever been found. The book describes it as a very poorly known species. That's because only a wing has ever been found. It was found in Ethiopia, and it led to a great debate with biologists arguing frantically as to whether or not you could describe an entire species based upon one wing. Nothing's known about it. That's all they ever found. And yet the conclusion was eventually, after many scientific articles and much debate, and many, many expeditions to go off in search of that particular bird, all they've ever found is one wing. The rest of it had been mangled under the tires of a car. Interesting, huh? So there you go. An interesting tale of a nightjar. There are so many species of nightjar that actually it's entirely possible some of them are endangered. I mean, something like this. The Donaldson Smith's nightjar, which is completely endemic to those sorts of areas, Somalia, Kenya. Apparently it's common though. It's just completely endemic. Oh, we've got so many exciting things to look forward to. Let's have a look. Tristan suggested a pennant-winged nightjar. Did I see that on the other page? I think I did. Hold on. I've got too many nightjars to go through. There's a pennant-winged nightjar. So that's this one down here. That's a pennant-winged. How cool is that? Look at those extensions on the wing. It says it's locally common though. No sign of it being endangered. Interesting. I have to go through my nightjars and tell you if any of them are endangered. I haven't seen any of them except for the ones that we get here. Add some new ones to my list in Kenya. Right. Sorry. I'm wrapping up. Got a cloak. Okay. Right, I have delayed you for long enough. I feel as though the anticipation has reached breaking point. Anticipation. Let's go over to James and hear part 2 of the saga.
Now, I'm not sure I can finish the story in 10 minutes, but I'm going to do it my best, give it my best shot. Here was episode 2. When last we left Albert and Maurice, they were hanging on Ubejan's tail. And as I said, Albert was dressed in skinny jeans and his physical number was up, so it was all he could do to hold on like that. Maurice was a bit bigger and fitter, and he said to Albert, "What must I do now? What must I do now?" And Albert said to him, "Climb up to its backside." So, duly, Maurice scrabbled his way up the tail of the rhino, and he found himself eventually on the final vertebra where there was a single hair on which he held on. So now, instead of sort of shaking from side to side like his mate Albert was doing, he was just sort of bumping up and down like this. So he looked down underneath as Ubejan ran. Ubejan. He said, "Oh, I'm on his backside. What must I do now, Albert? What must I do now?" And Albert, who let go with one of his 6 feet to cup his little leg to his mouth, said, "Climb onto along its back and get onto its shoulder." As he duly did, but it took a long time, and Ubejan, of course, at this stage was completely oblivious that he had 2 passengers that he did not know about, and so painful step by painful step, never letting go with more than 1 foot at a time, Maurice crept his way along the back of Ubejan. It was a dreadfully tough time for him. His very fashionable hipster clothes, unfortunately, were becoming torn, but on the back of the animal, Albert held on manfully. Now, apparently we're going to finish the story while we look at the horizon. Now, what then happened, of course, was that eventually Maurice made it to the shoulder. Now, you know how a shoulder moves on an animal, it kind of goes from side to side like this. So he found a hair on which to hold there, and found himself going around like this, a bit like a sort of a piston on a steam train. And Albert's still holding on the back, and Ubejan still going, Ubejan, Ubejan, Ubejan. Anyway, Maurice holding on for dear life to the one hair that he could find on the shoulder of the black rhinoceros Ubejan, and sitting next to the tick, a tick that was encased in mud, breathing its last. He ignored the tick and he shouted back to Albert. He said, "I'm on a shoulder now, I'm on a bleeding shoulder, what must I do now?" And Albert shouted back up. He couldn't see his friend anymore, but he shouted back up. He said, "Get onto its neck. Please get onto its neck. It's the only thing for it." So he climbed manfully onto the neck, or termite-fully onto the neck of Ubejan, the great black rhino. Ubejan, Ubejan. And there he found one last hair, and he hung on for grim life. By this stage, Albert was spent, and he dropped onto the ground behind Ubejan, but Ubejan just kept going. And as he disappeared, Maurice looked behind him and saw his friend on the path behind and shouted, "What must I do now? What must I do now, Albert?" And Albert said, "You've got to do one more thing, Maurice. Strangle the bastard!" And that's the end of the story. Fergus thought it was quite funny. So obviously I don't think that they did manage to strangle him at all, and I suspect that the termite mound had to be moved. That's one of my favourite stories of all time. I remember the first time I heard it, I laughed for about 4 days. That may just be my quirky sense of humour. Or just my quirky. In other words, lack of sense of humour. Thank you for that, Fergus.
No, I thought it was very funny.
You thought it was funny, did you?
4 days.
Good. Now, I believe I have so disgraced myself that we're going to go across to Jamie, who's got a wildebeest in the infrared.
I do. I'm really confused and I'm really bemused, and perhaps I need to, I don't know, we'll have to question James when he returns home so he can explain that sudden and abrupt end of the tale to me. I must have missed something. I feel as though I must have missed something. I don't know. Either way, nice to come onto... it might have been lost in translation, since Lou was probably chuckling at James and then relaying what he was talking about to me. The wonderful possibilities, everybody, of infrared. The fact that we can sit with diurnal animals during the nighttime period without worrying about dazzling them with our UFO-type lights that sit around our vehicle. We can sit quite happily in the darkness and watch them go about their evening business, which is a relatively unusual experience for all of us. So to sit with a quarantined wildebeest, you can see how alert they are. I wonder if I suppose the wildebeest also go through their rutting period, but they're not nearly as noisy or enthusiastic as the impala are, or indeed as jumpy. But I wonder if the other animals don't start to resent the period of rutting that the impala go through, because it must put them so on edge. Because usually they can somewhat rely upon the impala to alarm call if there's something sneaking up on them, something like a wildebeest. I mean, not a wildebeest, that is a wildebeest, something like a lion or a leopard. But now all of a sudden the impala are making noise almost willy-nilly, so to speak. There you go, there they go, dashing about, chasing each other around, dashing through the wildebeest without a care in the world. I wonder if there's a part of the wildebeest that are going, "Oh, would you shut up already? Be quiet. Let us rest in peace." Oh, lady, are you interested? No. Okay, on to the next one. Oh, she's not interested either. The wildebeest definitely isn't interested. It must be quite frustrating, being a herd animal out on quarantine, and you've got all of these impala rams barreling about. Because sometimes what the rams do is they spook the females, and the females go galloping off. And then because there's that herd mentality and it doesn't really pay to be the wildebeest that stays behind when everyone else is running, they must sort of run along with them for a while. It must get old quite quickly. Although I have to be honest, I'm not sure that wildebeest have quite that level of thinking capacity. I could be mistaken, but who knows. Alright, well, I have to be honest, I don't think I could fully compete with the incredible comedic talent that is Mr. Henry.
I'm not sure I have any comedic talent at all. The final control is sitting in gobsmacked silence saying, we don't really see why that was funny. And it's the kind of joke that you can't explain. So I imagine that as they're a sort of cross-section of society, that there must be many of you thinking, well, that's 20 minutes of my life I'll never get back. And if you are feeling that, I apologize profusely. Well. Sky, you ask a very good question, and it has to do with, I don't know actually. You say, why do some people say hyena and some people say hyena? Well, the reason, Sky, is because they have not read the word correctly and are unable to form the sounds correctly. It is hyena, of course. There is only one H in the word hyena. And many people, especially, it's not so much the presenters, but the final control, especially when they are new here, seem unable to say hyena, but must say hyena, until I ridicule them at breakfast, and then they don't do it anymore. But to irritate me, and so they do actually do it. They continue doing it. All right, that's going to be it from this hilarious vehicle today. We will see you tomorrow. I will be on foot at 6:30 in the morning. Thank you very much for coming on. A very quiet but very beautiful drive. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 06:30. Bye-bye.